Well, folks, I'm Dave, and I wear the reading glasses first.
And I'm Sean. and the crack was all his own hair and all his own hair color. And we asked how much. But anyway, I'm Sean.
Yeah. So Dave. So yeah, together we're Barstools and Bandtalk, and we get a humdinger of an interview tonight. Just outside Philadelphia, RFL Records gang. You can tell us all about it, Sean.
Yeah, so I've got to know this guy a little bit, Mick Micheals, and we're going to go into something funny here in a couple of minutes. Mick's got a band, Corners of Sanctuary, and they are, without a doubt, he is without a doubt one of RFL's hardest working fellas. Great all-around guy. We're going to have a great chat with Mr. Mick Micheals from Corners of Sanctuary.
Yeah, we'll bring him right on. You should say something about his awesome hair too, because I'm a little hair envy, to be honest.
As you should.
That's for you.
Hey, Mick.
Hey, how are you?
Good, brother. How are you?
Good.
There you are.
So, without further ado, I was talking with John and Doug today, and I said, we're going to have Mick on the show. And the first thing that John said, he's probably, without a doubt, one of the hardest working guys in the business that I know. John's been in the business a long time. For him to say something like that, I think bodes pretty well for you. Tell us about what you guys have been up to, man.
Well, I thanks for having me on. I appreciate that. I appreciate John's comments and his confidence, but I don't think that we do. I mean, we're just doing what we do. I think there's a lot of bands out there doing whatever they can do to kind of, keep whatever they're doing alive and an audience aware. So, but I do appreciate all the support that John and RFL have been giving us. So, this year, I'm with the band Corners of Sanctuary. We're celebrating 10 years. This is our 10th year anniversary.
Which is awesome.
Prior to the COVID thing, we had planned on we were going to do a UK tour and go back to Europe as well, but none of that was able to get happening, unfortunately. So we decided to release as much music as we possibly could this year. We figured, well, a band does what it does, and we play a lot of music. So we wrote a lot of music last year with the hopes of, spreading everything out for 12 months to kind of keep ourselves busy and to keep ourselves in the public awareness. Unfortunately, and you guys are probably aware of it too, because of 2020, a lot of bands just disappeared.
Yeah.
Kind of, closed up shop along with venues and stuff like that. So we did whatever we could to kind of to stay active, because I mean, primarily, playing out was our thing. Like we that was what we did. We brought the, James and I, the bass player, we played. We're from the 80s time zone, so playing out was all that we really knew. Like you'd do an album, you tour it, it dies, you do that again. You record an album and you tour it until it dies, and you keep repeating it. So it's kind of a model that we've kept even in the new industry. So playing out is important, kind of bring the music to the people thing. So we've been
Sean and I are both 25.
music.
We've heard stories about the 80s, but we're both 25, so.
Yeah, I know you guys. Lucky you.
Flying through his teeth, man. And I noticed a KISS shirt representing. That is amazing.
Yeah, I love. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny. I happened on a little thing today. There's three guys that do something like this out of Sweden, and they interviewed Eric Carr's drum tech from the Hot in the Shade tour, which was very cool. So I'm a huge KISS fan too. You said you're from that time zone. We're from that time zone. And recording was kind of the 1A, if you will, but A was touring and playing live and cutting your chops on that. Tell us about that scene down there, because obviously when we were growing up, there were so many great bands that came out of that area, Cinderella, Firehouse, different sorts of bands. Tell us about the scene where you're at.
Then or now?
Well, both.
Well,
both.
Then it was electric. I mean, it really was. Right now, and we see this a lot as we were kind of going around the U.S. There are just so many bands. There are just it's countless stuff, and so the pool is gigantic. Where back then, there were a lot of bands, but not like today. And say there was 20 bands playing in your region, 7 of them were really dynamite bands, and the top 3 got signed, right? And the scene was way different because every night was like a big show, and it didn't matter if it was Tuesday or Thursday or Friday or Saturday, Sunday. Sunday was the all ages night. Most places down here, like the Empire and the Galaxy and stuff like that, and it was just it was a show. It was like going to the Spectrum or Madison Square Garden. It was the same thing for all the locals, and the bands put on a big show. And it wasn't 5, 6, 7 bands deep. It was maybe 3 bands. You had your opener, then you had your headliner, then you had your closer. And, but they were all top quality bands. The closer was usually the newer band who was cutting their teeth and getting their chops together, maybe getting their development and all that kind of stuff until they proved themselves with the venue or that audience. So it was really exciting. Now there's still an excitement to play. There just isn't the same type of places to play. I mean, like, prior to COVID, it just became, there were bars that had bands to play in the background. And, again, you're talking sometimes 5 or 6 bands deep. And that's tough for an audience to digest, especially if they don't know them. And because there's so many bands. And metal down here is so different than what it was. Our style is a very niche type of style. It's old school, it's traditional metal, and it's not as popular. Whereas the death metal and the thrash is still kind of thriving here. So, but it's it's right now. We've been playing mostly out of the area. Like this year, we're trying to get back into the swing of things. But there's a lot of places that are just still not open or gone. So we're hoping it comes back. Everybody's still counting, for 2022. So
this is it. Well, to your point though, Mick, I mean, like obviously things changed from the 80s. I mean, back then, and Sean and I will test this too. And Sean did really well with this in another band, like an original band that he had. But we tried to be the best we could be so that we would get recognized and signed by a record company, and they would give you countless amount of money, and you pay them back via tours and album sales, and that's kind of the way it was. But you get signed; it was a big deal. There's lots of big venues, there's lots of interest in the selling music that we were playing. But now you fast forward 30 years, and it's 40 years. It's a whole different ballgame. Those venues are gone. There's no such thing as a record company per se that's going to, give you this kind of money. It's all on your own merit and what you can do, right? So you sell your own merchandising. If you have hard copy CDs, you sell that. Is that what's going on for Corners of Sanctuary? Is that where you find you guys are at?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, even though we're quote with a label, I still feel, and I have for such a long time, we're still an independent, or I like to call it, we're more of an in the trench band. Like, I mean, we're involved in everything that we do.
Right.
A lot of the financing comes from things that we do. I mean, we try to garnish support we can by talking to people and connecting resources. As Sean had assisted us with our last, the 3 Tremor show. We do a lot of merch packages and things like that. We also have learned that, part of the new model, since it's all social media based, right? It's kind of like your money in a bank. It's just a number now. Once you give up the actual physical thing of it, it's just a number, and it comes and goes, and so we're able to sometimes do a larger promotion for the people that support us. So we try to utilize that and give back, right? Whether we put them in a video, we give them ad banners on several of our different sites, or other projects we're involved in. We use our posting power and stuff like that. So it's a new industry, and a lot of it is in the artist's hands, both good and bad. I mean, for years, I mean, through the 90s, everybody was bitching and complaining, like, we have no control. They take our music, they take our publishing rights. We get no money at the end of a lot of those bands from the 80s, they came back with it. They were lucky they got the minivan from the tour, and that was about it, because they still owed, $250,000 to the record company. So nowadays we have more power, but there's no such thing as a big pay date now, right? And unfortunately, that's kind of the trade-off. Like we can retain all the rights to our music, which I think is fantastic, and you try to do the best that you can. As an example, there was some material that we did in the 80s for a development deal, late 80s, early 90s. It was something like the 89, 90 timeframe that we did during a development deal that didn't get released back to us until 2012. So like everybody who was involved in that is either gone from this earth, or everything just became null, and we were actually able to get back the tapes. And the tapes were shot, so it really didn't make a difference, but it finally came back into our rights at that point. So you see how, like, and that was nothing came about it, unfortunately. But think about all the bands that did have something. So I kind of like the industry now, more so back then. But back then we were more naive. So we just, we thought that that was the greatest thing, not realizing that at the end of the day we owed. So the responsibility back on you. I think that says a lot for a band's drive. Like, how much are you willing to go that extra mile to make something happen, rather than waiting for Daddy Warbucks to say, well, here's another check to do something with.
Right on.
Which I guess isn't bad. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, because it worked for a lot of bands.
Well, that's a perfect segue into our. Let me do this when we go to our first break, and we'll come back and we'll kind of because to be honest, Mick, I don't think you're probably maybe the second person I've heard. We've been doing this now for a year and a half, who's kind of a fan of the new model. So that's kind of cool. I'd like to maybe delve into that a little bit more. I know Sean's got some questions too. So is that okay? We'll take a quick break and then come back. How's that?
Absolutely.
All right. So after these messages, we'll be right back.